Thanks for visiting with us.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you for being here.
So you sit here now, awaiting trial, which could conceivably be months away, separated from your wife and your children. Was it worth it?
Yeah, it was. It truly was, because of what we came to accomplish did get accomplished, and even though it is extremely difficult to be away from my family, away from my children, I have 6 young children, as you know, all the way from 13 to 1 years old, and they do cry and miss their dad, and I miss them as well. But there was an extreme need to bring attention to what was going on, and to bring to light what of some extreme abuses that are happening to individuals and families, and also to expose many of the things that are happening to all the people across this nation. So as difficult as it was, I can honestly say that yes, it was worth it.
There are a lot of like-minded people that supported you throughout this occupation. What should those people do now?
Well, I believe that they are continuing to educate themselves, but they should get involved in government, involved in with their elected representatives, involved in bringing light to the violations that our federal government is imposing upon the states and the people, and should continue to insist that federal government follow the laws as well.
While there are a lot of people that supported you, on the flip side, we heard from a lot of people in Burns in particular, as the occupation was coming to an end, who said, they were happy to see you go. They were happy to see it end. What do you say to those people?
Well, it's interesting you say that, because when we were in Burns, Harney County, because there's a lot more towns than just Burns, but when we were in Harney County, we found out that by far the majority of the people supported us. The media didn't report that. They always seemed to focus on those that were against us, and that was their choice to do. But when we were having meetings with standing room only with 300-400 people, and we were speaking to them, and when we were being invited to their homes, to their churches, and when all the supplies that we used to live off while we were there, hundreds of people, were all supplied by the community, when we had freezers full of meat, shelves clear full of food, and every bit of that was supplied by the people of Harney County, I would challenge you or anybody else that says that Harney County was not behind us, and that certainly is the fact.
Do you anticipate any other occupations of federal property?
No, I do not anticipate that. I believe that we brought enough attention to the topic that the people that need to know, and the people that are still finding out now know, and that it is the duty of us now to continue to push this to get these things right. And I would like to go home and spend time with my family. I do understand that demonstrations like what we conducted, if you will, are a method in which we as a people have always used to bring attention to government overreach, to government acting outside the authority that the people have given it. And so if government continues to do that, then I imagine there will be groups, that will continue to, protest and continue to demonstrate. But I have no plans to do anything in the near future.
Would you support that type of activity?
Well, of course I would. I mean, we have the Boston Tea Party. We have Martin Luther King Jr. This is what he did. This is how he gained rights for the black community. This is how the women's rights were gained. This is what our nation does. This is how we bring attention to a topic, and we do it legally and lawfully to a topic that needs attention, that needs to be brought forth. And so, of course, I support it, but it needs to be done peacefully. It needs to be done in the proper way, and it needs to be done so people aren't hurt. And that's what we did.
Let me take you back to the day that you were arrested, January 26th. Were you surprised?
I was not expecting it. No, we were headed to a community meeting in Grant County. We were invited there by the community. We knew that the sheriff was going to be there. He had already said he was going to be there. We knew there was 300 or 400 people that were going to be there. And so we were peacefully going to Grant County with our laptops, our projectors, and our PA systems. And they attacked us like we were domestic terrorists or terrorists, even foreign terrorists.
Attacked you in what way?
Well, I mean, we were driving and they ambushed us. That's what happened. And we were peacefully going and giving our message to the people of Grant County. They invited us there. They had set up the meeting, all of that. And again, our weapons were a laptop, projectors, and a PA system. And their weapons were, a standing army with full gear. And I don't even know what would have provoked them to act in such a way, other than maybe them listening to the media about how dangerous we were when we really weren't.
So you had no sense that the government was moving in at that point?
No, we were peacefully educating people, and we had no reason to believe that the government would come in and attack us that way. No reason at all.
You surrendered?
Yeah, absolutely.
Why?
Why wouldn't I? Literally, why wouldn't I? I mean, we were never about violence. We were never about, like fighting to the death, if you will. We were about educating people, about making a demonstration that would bring light to a topic about how government is prosecuting Americans for ranching and for logging and for mining and also for simple things as hiking and camping and basically how federal government is overreaching and overstepping its bounds that the people have given it. That's what we were there for.
Mm-hmm. At what point did you learn that Mr. Finicum had died?
I did not find that out until after I was in the van, and that's when I found it out.
How did they share news of that tragedy?
Well, I found it out with the others, those that were there.
Sure. Sorry. Have you seen the video that law enforcement released of the
I have.
tragedy?
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts?
I'm going to advise you not to talk about the video itself.
Okay. Well, I know probably more facts than most people know. And I know for sure that Lavoie saved many lives that day. And that he is an American hero. And if he wouldn't have done what he'd done, there would have been more people dead today to talk about. And I honor him. He is a wonderful man. He was an American cowboy who was a family man that loved his country. And to be shot down the way he was is an atrocity. But I am also grateful for his stand and willing to save lives that day.
Can you explain that? I don't want to understand. How did he save additional lives?
I'm going to advise you not to talk about it.
Yeah. Well, I'll just leave it at that. But I know that day that he saved lives, and that if he did not do what he did, that there would be the rest of the people in the vehicle would be most likely killed as well. And that's all I will say about it.
The final 4 occupiers that remained, what role, if any, did you play in encouraging them or having them surrender?
Yeah,
and
I didn't play a whole lot of role. I did play at the end some roles, but as you can see, I'm being advised not to talk about it. And I would rather, again, talk about, what we were there for, why we were there. There's a lot of details that will be exposed, and we're excited for that. We feel very confident in that they will favor us as they're exposed. But at this point, until there's been full discovery made and shared, we need to talk about the things why we're there and what was our purposes.
Let me pose just one more question regarding those 4 remaining occupants, because you released a statement through your attorneys at the time, and I just wanted to see if you could elaborate that. Did they do the right thing in staying there?
I've released a lot of things through my attorneys, and I wouldn't answer that question for you right now. Absolutely not.
In some of the court filings, the FBI has alleged that they're investigating possible damage to artifacts and sacred burial grounds at the refuge.
Right.
Is there damage done?
None whatsoever. We offered those artifacts to the Paiutes, the Paiute people, multiple times. We offered for them to come get them. We offered for them to us to deliver them, and it appeared that most of it was just some type of political thing, because they never would respond. They say they wanted them. They said that they were theirs, but then they never responded. So we left them alone. We never messed with them. And the thing that I would like to point out is how poorly the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service was taking care of those. They were just strewed everywhere. They weren't taken care of. And so to come in and say that we, somehow took care of them worse than them, or in any way, we didn't. We respected them. We respect their culture. We respect their beliefs. We have very close ties to Native Americans, and have very fond connections to them. And anyway, so as far as those artifacts, I think that it's a great political ploy for those who are trying to demonize us, but the reality is different.
Maybe you can set the record straight then as far as reality. One of their claims is that they found a trench with human feces near a sensitive cultural site.
Yeah, and there was no trench that I know of that was built in feces or any of that. So, I mean, I don't know anything about what they're talking about there. None. There was just none. So.
In a blind test, thousands of Oregonians.
One of the other concerns during the occupation was use of government computers. Did you use a government computer?
No, absolutely not.
Did you see anybody use a government computer?
Nope, absolutely not. We actually took them and unplugged them, disconnected them, and set them aside so that no one would use them. That's what we did. So if somebody else did something different, I don't know about it.
But you did not?
Absolutely not.
Your defense lawyers have publicly described the court battle as phase 2. What does that mean to you?
I don't know. I mean, it could mean a lot of things. I wouldn't want to speculate on what they are saying phase 2 is, other than I would say that this is still a education process. We're exposing what government is doing to people. We're exposing how government is, the federal government primarily, is acting completely out of the authority in which it has been given. That the federal government has rules too, and those rules are found in the Constitution of the United States, and that they're only given certain powers And beyond that, they're not given any. And yet they have gone way beyond these powers. They've come down into the states. They've taken over the education system. They've taken over the welfare system. They've taken over the healthcare system. They've taken over, most of our industries. They've taken over the agriculture. And they're doing it to control so that they can continue to build and grow their own bureaucracies and to benefit from that. And that was never the way that this government was, our government was structured. Our government was structured for the federal government to protect the states against the outside world, to be a barrier for the states, to handle international trade, to handle national defense, to protect the borders. That way the states and the people can live free. They can work and govern themselves. They work together and they have that protection. It was never intended for the federal government to come down into the states and to control its industries, control its health care, control its education, and control its agriculture, and the list goes on and on.
You obviously have some strong opinions and views, but can you really affect policy and change from a jail cell?
I don't know. I'm going to do the best I can. I mean, I hope that I can. I believe that I can because of education. And I believe a good example of affecting change in a jail cell was Martin Luther King Jr. He did the same thing. And he seemed to make a pretty good effect on people, and one that has benefited mankind because of his stand.
What have you learned from this experience?
I've learned a tremendous amount. I've learned that I've been able to prioritize. I've been able to learn that I know that God truly lives and that He loves us and wants us to be happy, wants us to be free. And I should say I've strengthened my understanding of these things. I've also learned how much, again, to strengthen my understanding how much I love my family and how much they mean to me. And one thing that I could say is that I'm in here, I'm in these prison walls, and now that I'm out of solitary confinement, I get to associate with some people. And I've asked the question, how did they get here, and why, and where was the breakdown? Because there's a lot of people here, and they're very similar in a lot of ways of why they're here. And I see that it is mostly a breakdown in their families, that they didn't have families. They didn't have a mother and a father, and they weren't really raised in that structure. And it threw them off as individuals. And so one thing that I have for certain learned is that the core unit of society is the family. And that we as a people, we need to strengthen our families. We need to, strengthen our homes. And we need to try to stay together as mothers and fathers so that we can raise our children so they don't end up in drugs and they don't end up in prisons. And I believe, honestly, that is a core element to strengthening our society and to healing us as a nation.
Forgive me if this is too personal, but you've now put yourself in a predicament where you're separated from your children.
Right.
They don't have a father at their home.
Right. And I understand that. And I stay closely connected to them. But again, I had to weigh of whether it was worth it or not. Whether what I was doing was going to benefit my children and my family in the future, and whether it was worth it. Just as someone who goes into the military and serves across seas or even here to defend their freedom and to defend their family, that is a sacrifice that is made and has to be made at times. There's been always situations where people have had to leave their fields or their farms, if you will, and their families to go and to defend and to fight in order to preserve. And
you sit here today and say, it's all worth it.
I do, absolutely.
The government, in their complaint, focuses heavily on statements that were made and posted online. Did you ever think, maybe I said too much?
Well, remember, I was here for education, and you can't educate or to inform, I guess, if you want to call it, to inform. And you can't inform unless you talk. And so we weren't going to stop talking, because then we wouldn't accomplish what we came to accomplish.
You were also charged in connection with that 2014 standoff in Nevada. Why do you think the feds brought those charges now?
I'm going to invite you not to answer that.
Yeah, I mean, I have my reasons, but it's disconnected at this time, so I won't answer that. Yeah.
Even today, there were additional charges filed. Jerry DeLemus was arrested. There were charges filed against him. 9 defendants in total. What's your reaction to that?
I really don't know about that. I find that very interesting, though, that he was arrested. I think that in the end, it's going to really show that what they're trying to do is trying to stop people from exercising their free speech and their First Amendment rights. I think that's what this is going to show. Especially with the people that they're arresting and the reasons why they're arresting them, because these were people that were effective in spreading the word that government is acting outside the authority that the people have given it, that the government is the one breaking the law, and so they're trying to suppress that, and the people should be concerned about that.
Those who spoke with you at the refuge said there was a sense of confidence that this group that was there felt like they were going to succeed in this movement. Did you succeed?
Absolutely, we did. Absolutely.
How?
Well, we brought a tremendous awareness to what was going on, and many people know about it. And we believe that if we haven't got the pendulum swinging the other way, it's slowed down. It's very close to swinging the other way. And what I mean by that is people are aware of what the federal government is doing to people now, and that wasn't the way it was before. They're aware that they're going in and prosecuting ranchers because they won't sell their property to them. They're aware that they're going in and taking property through duress. They're aware that they're going in and condemning properties just so that they can take it. And they're also becoming more aware of the Constitution and how it gives very little authority to the federal government, and how the federal government has taken a tremendous amount of usurping that authority, and how that is detrimental to our society. So yes, we have succeeded, and we will continue to succeed.
And I guess that's the question, is really, it's not clear to me what is next. So yes, you've raised awareness, but then where do you go from here?
Well, so I guess you go into, I mean, that's probably not my duty. That would be where the elected representatives start to stand out. That would be where people start to get in the right positions to influence government to start changing. And that's where that's what's always happened in civil rights issues. That's always what's happened when changes need to be made. As Martin Luther King says, there's a direct action, and I'll read you his words. He says right here, and this is his letter that he wrote in the Birmingham City Jail, and he says
something that's provided to you in jail, or
no, yeah. Anyway, this is his letter, and he answers the question: why direct action? Why did they do what they did when they did that in Birmingham City? And he says, nonviolent direct action seeks to create such a crisis and establish such creative tension that a community that has constantly refused to negotiate is forced to confront the issue. It seeks to dramatize the issue that it can no longer be ignored. So, the purpose of direct action is to create a situation so crisis-packed that it will inevitably open the door to negotiation. And that's exactly what we did, and that's exactly what we're doing, and that's exactly what I believe will happen.
Do you have any regrets?
No, I don't. It's hard being in here. I won't deny that. It is tremendous to be in here and to be away from our family. And I've had to weigh that. Do I regret? Because I mean, I left a tremendous good life. I have a good business that brings in a good income. I have a home. And those things are secondary. I have a beautiful wife that is wonderful and sweet and kind and good to me, and I try to be good to her. And I have 6 children, ages 13 down to 1. I got three boys and 3 girls. And my life is about as, in my view, is a very good life. So to leave that and to take this risk was tremendous, but I do not regret it.
How do you explain it to them?
They understand. They understand that and feel that, you know, that what I was doing, what I did and what I'm doing is right. And they believe in me, and they honor what we do, because we believe that men and women must stand when they see something wrong. They must come to the aid of their neighbor when their neighbor is being abused. And if we were to say it scripturally, the Lord said, love God with all your heart, might, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And that's what we tried to do. We saw our neighbor, the Hammonds, in that they were being abused, that there was tremendous things that were wrong, that were going on, and that the government was about ready to set a precedence that was going to allow, you know, double jeopardy to continue, allow cruel and unusual punishment that was offending our First Amendment rights. And we could see that this family was put in duress so that they could take their property, and we felt that we had to do something. We had to make some type of stand to bring some type of attention to it so it didn't become the normal.
Thank you, Ammon. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
In a blind test.
When the powder cleared that April morning in Lexington, and the British soldiers moved on to Concord, where another battle ensued, eventually driving them back down the road towards Lexington. The British had drawn blood, and they had attacked the civilianry. And the militias gathered, and they were hiding in the trees and lining the roads, and they started firing and killing the British soldiers. It's important to understand that these civilians, these militiamen, they were still British subjects. This wasn't the United States of America. These were people rising up against a government who would defy the principles of human rights and the rule of natural law. And they said, God help us, we have to step up and defend our families. They didn't shoot first. They didn't have a principle of, well, let's pick a fight, let's go to war. Because bloody revolt and killing is the last resort of principled men. It was for them, and it should be for us today. But friends, it's with a heavy heart that I look on the state of what once was the United States of America. With more patriots being arrested every day as dissidents, it's becoming more and more clear that our government is doing one of two things, and likely both. They're telling the civilianry of America that they will comply, that this is a police state, and those who are dissenters and stand up will be punished. At the same time, they are pushing and pushing and pushing. I think it's fair to say that they're trying to push the patriots to violent action so that they can crush them and quelch the idea of standing up, quelch those who speak out and those who rise for liberty, so that once and for all, this can become a police state. It's with a heavy heart that I inform you, and I want you to understand that our government is in a state of treason against our Constitution, against moral law, God's law, and these states. And it's with a equally heavy heart that I say that most of our local officials and sheriffs are fully complicit in this. This is not the America that you grew up in. This is no longer a nation of liberty. The government has declared war now on this people, and they are attacking us with increased aggressiveness. The blood will continue to spill, the arrests will continue to be made. Now it falls to us. It's time to stop the pettiness. It's time to stop worrying about things like presidential debates. The government is gone, friends. The United States government has completely turned against the people. And any candidate who is not fully standing up against that is really not standing with our Constitution or with this people. As we see more of the Bundys and other patriots who are at Bundy Ranch in Oregon being arrested and hauled away. As we saw Lavoy Finicum murdered in cold blood, assassinated. As they come for people like you and like me, we have to be realistic. This is no longer the United States of America. Our Constitution is not recognized as law. And we fall back to the state that was spoken of in 1776, where we have a government who has completely ignored law and justice and due process. A government where it is the right and the duty of the people to cast them off and to secure liberty for future generations. And we need to ask ourselves very carefully, what will we do? What can we do? This is not a call to violence. It's a call to stand principled and ready. It's a call for the people who value liberty, who love their neighbor as themselves, who love God, who love justice. It's a call for them to set aside distractions and to appeal mightily to heaven, to search our souls, search the scriptures, search our consciences for what to do. But it's also a time to begin running interference against this treasonous government. To do whatever is principled and right. To tie up the gears and break down the machine of tyranny. The time has come to stand. I refuse to be idle and leave my children living in a nation like the one I live in right now, where every vehicle that pulls in may be a federal agent, and every officer may be putting a gun to my head. Friends, our government and those complicit with its treason have made its choice. Our politicians who refuse to stand with us have made their choice. God help them. Their hearts may be opened and they may repent and join with liberty. But any of our public officials who will not stand against the treason from this government must be regarded as complicit in this war on the people, as one by one they take patriots, prisoners of war, and lock them away in cages under the false pretense of due process. I will not sit still. I will not be quiet. I will not make pretense. I will not ignore what has happened to this nation. It is with a grave, heavy heart that I say these things. We've done this to this nation. Our apathy and our sin and our cowardice has brought us to this. This is not a sinking ship. This is a sunken ship. But together we can stand. Friends, we can stand. We can rise up. We can seek justice. We can seek God. We can seek our consciences. We can appeal to heaven. And we can start rising against this government. Wherever you are, get together with your neighbors who are principled. Watch your back. Pay attention to what's happening around you. Be prepared. so that we can rise and God help us, that we can restore liberty for our children. This is the time we hoped would never come. But it is here. We should be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. We should never fire the first shot. We should not be rash to action. We should be principled, peaceful, merciful, forgiving, and bold.
Hey guys, it's Dallas. It's March 3rd, 2016. I wanted to show you guys something real quick. This is from Fox News, mainstream media, Fox Filth, whatever you want to call them. I wanted to show you guys how they demonize people like Cliven Bundy here. Bundy's $1 million herd of ornery cattle giving feds a meaty problem. Says the feds have rogue rancher Cliven Bundy behind bars, but corralling his $1 million herd of ornery cattle is proving to be a much more daunting task. The 69-year-old landowner, whose ranch 80 miles northeast of Las Vegas was the scene of a 2014 standoff with the BLM, was arrested last month on charges related to the Nevada incident when he left his ranch to travel to Oregon, where his sons were involved in another standoff with federal officials. Meanwhile, his 1,000 head of cattle are still roaming federal lands, due in part to his absence and also to what officials call his unconventional, if not bizarre, ranching methods. Listen to how they spin this. Rather than manage and control his cattle, he lets them run wild on the public lands with little, if any, human interaction until such time when he traps them and hauls them off to be sold or slaughtered, said court documents filed by federal prosecutors last month. He does not vaccinate or treat his cattle for disease, does not employ cowboys to control and herd them, does not manage or control breeding, has no knowledge of where all the cattle are located at any given time, rarely breeds them. Okay, now down here, and then it just goes on to keep demonizing him. You can go to Fox, it's on there. But down here, look at this. It shows federally owned land as a percent of total. The percent of the total acreage of each state controlled by the federal government. Look at how Fox is showing that this is okay. Okay? Look at all this dark areas. That's federally owned. So, do you guys see what's going on here? Okay? This article, I'd go in and read it. It does say in here too, right here, Bundy's sons, Ammon and Ryan, are also in prison, where they will each face up to 6 years and hefty fines for their role in the 6-week occupation of the wildlife refuge in Oregon, also a protest of alleged federal government overreach on public lands. I mean, they are just demonizing Cliven on here, but then they're showing the masses that it's okay. But remember, in the Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, it says that they aren't allowed to own land. But see, when you try to argue this with people, the masses, this is what they read. This is what we're up against with Fox. Now come over here. I don't know if anyone saw this over on Daily Sheeple, but on Daily Sheeple you also have this going on. This was the other day they put this up. This was yesterday, I'm sorry. More ranchers being targeted. Oregon grass-fed ranchers have animals confiscated, face criminal charges for grazing livestock. So this is another article on Daily Sheep, where it says, the latest from Paradise Ranch, the judge has ordered that all the animals we are charged with neglecting be forfeited unless we pay a bond of $39,780 by 4 p.m. Pacific Time, Thursday, June 11th. Unless we come up with the money by that time, 35 of our animals, cows and their calves, and a boar will be forfeited. So you got this going on. This is another article. This family, you know, here's another story, and this is in Oregon too. You know, like they said, they're coming after the ranchers, guys. I mean, how many more articles are we going to need to read? So I just wanted to keep you guys posted. I'm going to try to do this every Wednesday and Sunday, and I'm going to try to even do it more often, because this is what I do pretty much daily besides farming. So I'll keep you guys updated. Thank you so much, and please still help Pete and Deb out. Go to the PeteSantilliShow.com/donate. Thanks, guys.
I'm Jake Morphonios. I'm the National Director of the Citizens for Constitutional Freedom Activist Network. In the lands of the West, good law-abiding American citizens have been under assault by the federal government for decades. Though there is no justification in the U.S. Constitution for the federal government to own vast tracts of land outside of its own capital, it has nonetheless taken control of the majority of the lands in most western states. In the state of Nevada, for example, the federal government claims to own 85% of all the land in the state, and in Oregon, more than 50% of the land is claimed. But these high percentages do not satisfy the federal government, which, with its insatiable appetite for ever more control over the natural resources of the people, uses the heavy hammer of government power to wrest control of private property from the hands of the citizens to whom it rightfully belongs. Harney County in Oregon is approximately 10,000 square miles. It once was the most prosperous county in the state due to its logging, ranching, and mining industries. But today, Harney County is the poorest in the state, and the reason for the county's rapid decline is intervention by the federal government. The government's Bureau of Land Management, the BLM, began closing off lands and shutting down the operations of loggers, ranchers, miners. Ranchers who refused to sell their lands to the BLM were targeted with expensive and frivolous lawsuits. Others were cut off from parts of their own lands by illegal road closures. When one group of approximately 35 ranchers refused to sell their lands to the federal government, the government rerouted water into a nearby lake, overflowing it and flooding all of the ranches and the ranchers off of their property. The BLM also started fires that burned down the homes and corrals of other ranchers. Tens of thousands of acres from more than 100 ranches acquired by these nefarious tactics were added to a government bird sanctuary called the Malheur Wildlife Refuge. And that is where our story begins. Harney County, Oregon, January 2nd, 2016. Dwight and Stephen Hammond were two local ranchers who had been sentenced to prison after a long and grueling legal battle with the BLM. After serving their time and being released from prison, the government took them back to court for the exact same charges to demand that the men serve a lot more time. And the government won. A group of concerned citizens gathered in Burns, Oregon to protest the cruel treatment of the Hammonds. But rather than go home once the protest was over, a group of them drove to the vacant office buildings at the Malheur Wildlife Refuge and made it their base of operations, which they named the Harney County Resource Center. Their plan was to use the on-site property records to return stolen lands back to the rightful property owners. Afterward, the remaining refuge lands would be turned over to the control of the Harney County government in cooperation with the local Burns Paiute Indian tribe. On January 4th, an Arizona businessman named Ammon Bundy strode forward through the snow to speak to a throng of anxious reporters outside the resource center. He said, "Many of you have asked us what our name is. Other than just thinking of ourselves as citizens that care and who feel like it's time that we make a stand to protect our human rights, we didn't really know what to say. But we felt that we should give ourselves a name, at least for identification in news reports. That name is Citizens for Constitutional Freedom." As camera shutters clicked and reporters scribbled notes, Ammon continued, "Our purpose, as we have shown, is to restore and defend the Constitution so that each person in this country can be protected by it, and so that prosperity can continue. We love our country. We love the people in it. We know that we are struggling to know what to do as a nation. And many times, in many ways, we are dividing as a people. We hope that we can restore those things that can unite us to protect individuals and not forget about how important each person is and how each person has the right to live in liberty and has the right to own property and to be able to reap the fruits of their own labors." With those words, the Citizens for Constitutional Freedom was born. Yet it was not the goal of Ammon, his brother Ryan, the group's spokesman Lavoy Finicum, or any of the other people at the refuge to set up a formal organization with any specific hierarchy. It was understood that Ammon was leading the fight. He didn't need a business card to prove his credentials. Over the next several weeks, Ammon worked tirelessly to educate the public about the purposes and principles of the supreme law of our nation, the United States Constitution. Some laughed at him, others mocked. Some were apathetic. But then Ammon began to receive speaking invitations from communities, not just in Oregon, but in several states. The movement was picking up steam, and that is when the federal government moved in to put an end to Ammon's efforts. Not only was Ammon arrested, but also his brother Ryan was shot. His good friend Lavoy Finicum was chased into a militarized ambush by the FBI, by the Oregon State Police, and by a detail of mercenary contractors. Lavoy was gunned down in cold blood with his hands still in the air. Surrounded by over 100 federal agents, scores of government vehicles, surveillance planes, armed drones, the remaining supporters at the refuge left. Some were arrested by federal agents that day, many more in the days and weeks that followed. The Citizens for Constitutional Freedom seemed to have succumbed to an early demise. This is where we come in. On the day that Ammon first entered the wildlife refuge, I created a Facebook page called Citizens for Constitutional Freedom. As a longtime investigative journalist who has covered cases of government abuse for 15 years, my goal was to provide up-to-the-minute news and information about the events happening in Oregon. The page received national attention. I was quoted in major publications such as the New York Times, Rolling Stone magazine, Oregon Public Broadcasting, the Washington Times, among others. I'm the grandson of Ellen Morphonios, the famous hanging judge known internationally by her nickname Maximum Morphonios for her harsh sentences on repeat violent offenders. Ellen hosted the radio show for Rush Limbaugh from time to time. She was a frequent expert legal panelist on CNN, Fox News, and MSNBC. But when the federal government, the FBI, tried to set my grandmother up by offering her a bribe, she flatly refused. They became vindictive and began harassing our family for a period of years. I learned from my teenage years to distrust the federal government. My grandfather was a Pulitzer-nominated investigative journalist who later became an influential political strategist. As I grew into adulthood, I followed in my grandparents' footsteps. I've worked as a political campaign manager, a strategist for several state and federal candidates. I was the North Carolina State Director for the presidential campaign of Steve Forbes. I was a writer for the Ron Paul presidential campaigns in 2008 and 2012. I've been active in the liberty movement for most of my life. After spending a week with other leaders in the liberty movement from various states following the murder of Lavoy Finicum, seeing the need to draw in like-minded citizens who were concerned about federal overreach, but who weren't necessarily involved in the issue of Western land grabs, I took on the responsibility to organize a national grassroots campaign to carry on the work that Ammon and Lavoy were trying to accomplish, to seek to unite various groups into a united coalition. To that end, Citizens for Constitutional Freedom was formally organized into a nationwide activist network. There is no centralized leadership. There is no command hierarchy. The power of the organization remains at the local level and the hands of the individuals where it belongs. Because of this, there is no specific group of leaders that can be taken out by the federal government to shut the work down. Anyone who wishes to be a leader in Citizens for Constitutional Freedom need only learn the U.S. Constitution and take action. The bylaws of the organization state that the purpose of the Citizens for Constitutional freedom shall be 1. To conduct a national education campaign to help citizens understand the tenets and principles of the United States Constitution. 2. To foster cooperation between a nationwide network of liberty-minded individuals and activist groups. 3. To engage in protests of violations of the United States Constitution by the federal government and its agencies. 4. To demand accountability from the judicial, legislative, and executive branches of the federal government, as well as from state and local officials. To accomplish these goals, we invite all people and all like-minded groups who share their concern for the ever-growing tyranny and overreach of the federal government to join us. Who affiliates with us? Americans who can have concerns about things such as land, resource, and property rights, heavy tax burdens and government regulations, air, water, soil destruction due to chemtrails and other pollutants, people concerned with Second Amendment rights, food rights, including the right to store seeds, freedom from mandatory vaccinations, the rights of the unborn, parental rights for both married, unmarried, or divorced parents, civil rights, freedom of speech, religion, and the press, unconstitutional foreign policies, central bankers and the Federal Reserve, border security, foreign wars and needless conflicts, personal privacy from the federal government, Common Core and federal control of public education, Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030, state sovereignty and related 10th Amendment issues, crackdowns on parents who choose to homeschool their children, tort reform and mandatory minimums, the failed war on poverty, the failed war on drugs, and the failed war on terror, unaccountable federal politicians and bureaucracies, the militarization of local police and sheriff's departments by the federal government. The list goes on. The reason that all of these issues are of concern to the citizens for constitutional freedom is because they all come from the same problem: failure by the federal government to abide by the U.S. Constitution. As an experienced and successful political strategist with expertise in social psychology, I've chosen to focus our organization's efforts in ways and with methods that have broad appeal. This organization shall not sponsor or participate in armed occupations, efforts to promote sovereign citizenship, or any other activities that are certain to result in a heavy-handed federal response. There is more than one way to take a hard stand against government corruption and abuse. Our activists need not fear the prospect of life in prison as a result of active participation in the Citizens for Constitutional Freedom. When General George Washington faced insurmountable odds during the American Revolution, he did not charge headlong into a fight that he could not win. He did not choose to sacrifice the lives of his soldiers needlessly. What he did do was employ tactical retreats. He regrouped, he strategized, and he changed tactics as needed. And then he struck again at the British, and again and again. General Washington continued fighting until the Patriots were ultimately victorious. We shall employ the cunning strategies and tactics of men like General Washington, Karl von Clausewitz, Sun Tzu, others in our own campaign against the federal government. Let it be clear, we are not anti-government. Our noble founding fathers laid the foundations of a great nation with a beautiful system of government that includes divisions of powers, checks, and balances. In fact, we are very pro-government. In our eyes, it is those who are seeking to overthrow the traditional government that was established by our U.S. Constitution who are anti-government. Ours is a constitutional republic, yet these revolutionaries seek to undermine our republic and establish a European-style socialist democracy under the control of multinational corporations, central bankers, and elite oligarchs. We are counter-revolutionaries who seek to preserve our constitutional government from being destroyed by the enemies of America. A member of the Citizens for Constitutional Freedom should never remain silent when we are accused of being anti-government. It simply is not true. And so begins our journey to restore and defend the U.S. Constitution, so that, as Ammon said in the beginning, each person in this country can be protected by it and prosperity can continue. We love our country, we love our communities, we love our fellow citizens who share in the blessings of America. If you aren't sure what you can do for our nation, or if you're concerned at how divisive it is becoming, then we invite you to link arms with us and stand up for what is right. There is strength in numbers. And finally, in case there is any question as to the legitimacy of what we seek to do, I'd like to read from a letter that Ammon Bundy sent me from prison. He's given me permission to share this with you. Jake, first I must thank you. Your letter lifted my spirit and gave me hope for the education of many people about principles of agency, freedom, and natural law, including the Constitution. I feel confident at giving you my blessing in name and deed. On the very day that I'm recording this message to you, the FBI has engaged in multiple raids to arrest several more American citizens, including Ammon's brothers Davy and Mel. If you are as angry as I am, and as determined to make a difference, then I call on you to take a stand. Join us. United we stand. Divided we fall.